This video is part 2 for anybody who really wants to get started in real estate and wants to get some good ideas of how to get started and how to do it right. My name is Shiloh Lundahl, and you are watching the Improved channel focused on real estate investing. In my first video about getting started in real estate investing, I spoke about Mike and Britt, who represent the average Americans that are just trying hard to get ahead with their money. They worked really hard on getting out of debt following the Dave Ramsey program, and now they're in that place where they're trying to learn how they can invest their money in the best way possible. They've spent a lot of time trying to learn about stocks and mutual funds and which investment strategy in the stock market is really going to be the most beneficial to them. So today I'm going to talk about real estate and the expected returns that you can get in real estate. So first of all, with the stock market, if you can get a 12% rate of return, that's a pretty good return. Unfortunately, even when stocks say that they've gotten an average return of 12%, when you look deeper into that stock or into that mutual fund, what you find is the way that they came up with that calculation isn't the normal math that you and I do. A lot of times they're able to either leave out certain years, or maybe they don't talk about the fees associated with managing the fund or anything like that. So there's a difference between the actual rate of return and the stated rate of return. A lot of people say that if you can get an actual rate of return of 7 or 8%, then you're doing pretty good when it comes to being in the stock market. In real estate investing, we talk about two main returns. One is your cash on cash return, and the second is IRR. IRR stands for internal rate of return. The internal rate of return is basically where you calculate your overall return on the investment, and then you divide that return by the number of years that you were involved in that investment, and then you divide that by the amount of money that you put into the investment. So basically, you're going to come up with the interest that you earned on that investment per year. So let's talk a little bit about a specific property to help you understand how this works. And then we're going to talk about how this compares to the stock market, getting either 7 or 8% of a real rate of return or a 12% advertised rate of return. We're going to analyze a property that I just purchased in order to go over those numbers with you and explain the cash on cash return and the internal rate of return. This is an average property, one that I just recently purchased, not one of my best properties, not one of my worst properties. Again, just an average property. So this is what the property looks like. This property is actually called a Gemini home, or kind of a twin home. So basically it's a model match on both sides, and I own one of the sides. This is a 4-bedroom, 2-bath unit in Mesa, Arizona. Now let's take a look at the numbers. So this property was a property that we purchased on the street called Birchwood. Okay, the purchase price was $200,000, and we got a loan from a hard money lender for $175,000. Now, I also had a buddy of mine who wanted to invest in a property with me, or at least lend me money on a property so that he can kind of learn the process. So he came in with $20,000. So if you add that up, that's $195,000. So I had to come in with some of my own money to help purchase the property, and then to pay for closing costs, and then pay for repairs, and then pay the money on borrowing that money. And then I also had to pay closing costs when we went to refinance the property. So basically, the costs right here represented money that I had to bring in order to help purchase the property and rehab the property and get it ready for that long-term loan. So the total amount that I had to come up with was $28,000, okay? So once I purchased the property and I got it refinanced, the property then would appraise at $255,000. So that was the market value of the property. My total invested was $223,000. So I was actually able to create some equity going into this property by buying it below market value, fixing it up, and then increasing the value of the property once it's been fixed up. Also, I have a special strategy that I use in order to invest in properties, and it's called the lease option strategy. So I'm going to run these numbers according to the lease option strategy because that's the strategy that I use in order to invest in real estate. So right here, the people that wanted to get the property and rent it out don't just want to be renters for very long, they actually want to purchase the property. So they're going to pay me a $4,000 fee in order to have the right to purchase the property within the next few years. And in this situation, we went ahead and set the property price at $280,000, that they'd be able to buy the property in the next 3 years. I know that's higher than what the property is valued at now at $255,000, but the reason they wanted to do that is because they believe that the market is going to continue to rise. So they were willing to lock in a higher amount in order to get into that property today. And there's a lot more when it comes to lease options, and that's why I have a lot of videos about lease option strategies, and I'll include those videos here in the notes below. So when you include that lease option fee in the amount that the property is worth minus what I have into the property plus the lease option fee, I've been able to create $36,000 worth of equity just by doing this lease option strategy and getting that option fee back. Then, after I've put a tenant into the property, I now go to the bank and I ask them to give me a loan for that property. I want to put that property into a long-term loan rather than paying high rates to a money lender. So there's a banker that I've been working with that gives investors 30-year loans on their investment properties. So we're going to run the numbers based off of working with that banker. So he's going to give me a loan for $191,250. Then I'm going to get another private money lender that just wants a return on his money, and he's going to lend me $12,750 in order to get a 8 to 10% return on his money that he's lending to me. So when you add that up, the total amount of loans I'll be getting on this property is $204,000. So my total left into the property is going to be $15,000. So where did I get that number? Well, you remember that the total amount invested after I got it fixed up and everything was $223,000. But also I got an option fee for $4,000 right here. So when you minus the option fee from the total amount that I had into the property, that's going to be $219,000. Then when I get loans for $204,000, that makes it so I have left into the property about $15,000. So now let's take a look at what the cash on cash return is when we invest in this property. This is the number that you want to use in order to compare what your rate of return is compared to another type of investment. All right, now let's take a look at the numbers. So I'm going to get $1,550 a month in rent for this property. Then once you take away the mortgage payment, and that mortgage payment is an interest rate of 4.625 for 30 years fixed rate. And then you take away taxes and insurance. I know the taxes and insurance are really low for this property, but that is the actual taxes and insurance. Then you take away that $106, which is that private money loan. That payment is about $106 a month. So I'm going to be cash flowing about $336 a month on this property. So my total cash on cash return is 29%. So how did I get that number? Well, I took the $366 a month, I times that by 12, and then I divided that by the $15,000 that I put into that property. And that's going to give me a 29.28% return. So that's a lot higher of a return compared to the stock market. However, this takes a lot more time and effort and skill than it takes to buy a mutual fund or a stock. So it's not fair just to compare it to what a stock return is, because that is more of a passive investment, while this is more of an active investment. And when you invest actively, you should expect a higher rate of return. However, because this is a lease option property, this property does not take me much more time to manage. In fact, with all of my lease option properties, I would say on average, they may take an hour a month to manage. And I'm being honest, because most of them do not call me for any repairs because they're taking care of the repairs because they want to own the property. And so they don't bother me with repairs because that's also written into our option agreement that they will take care of all of the repairs for the property. However, if there is something big that happens, then I'm going to step in and I'm going to take care of it. Because when I originally rented it out to them on the lease option, I tried to fix everything that was major with the property, such as, the roof needs to be in good working order, the plumbing, the electrical, all of the major things need to be in good working order. Even if the property isn't 100% in pristine condition, those major things, they need to be working. They need to be working well. So now let's take a look at what if I were to sell this property in 3 years? What is the return? Well, remember, I said that I was going to sell it for $280,000. Then you're going to need to subtract the amount of money that I still owe on that first mortgage. And that amount of money is going to be $181,000 after 3 years. Then you go ahead and subtract that amount that the private money lender lent me, which is that $12,750. Then I have to also pay some part of the closing costs, even though the buyer pays the majority of the closing costs. So that's going to be about $2,800 for me. So my proceeds from the sale is going to be about $82,650. Now, my original investment, remember, was $15,000. Let me get that right. Okay. And so what that means is that if you take my total return minus what I had into it, and then I divide that by the 3 years that I owned the property, and that's actually going to equal a 183% return per year. So that's an IRR. So now when you take that number and you compare that number to the stock market, you're going to get a much better return investing in real estate. So why is that number so much higher than stocks? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is because you get to experience appreciation with your properties. Two, you have what's called debt pay down. And so you get to earn more money as that property's debt gets lower and lower as your tenant pays it off over time. And then you get to keep that cash flow coming to you. So these are all major avenues for making money when it comes to real estate. So hopefully this video was helpful in helping you understand the difference between the IRR, the internal rate of return, and your cash on cash return. And as you can see, when you learn how to do this process, then you can make a lot better of a return in real estate than you can on average in the stock market. But it takes a lot more effort to learn, and it's a lot more active. But if you are willing to put forth the work, then you can reap the benefits. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing to the channel, clicking the notification bell. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day.